Hi there, welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ryan, and today I'm joined by
Dave,
Ted,
Nate.
And today on the MageForge, we're going to be forging up Rune. So who is Rune, or what is Rune?
Well, he's my friend.
He's a magic item that I gave out in the D&D game that I'm running, and at first glance, it's just a little rock that's
So you gave a pet rock.
I gave him a pet rock, but he has the ability to totally transform into a minute
that goes on for like a half hour every time. It's so annoying.
minute humanoid creature that actually acts as a familiar. So his benefits are he can be a familiar, and he reduces gold cost for putting spells into a spell book.
The only problem is he's a little rock guy, so he's slow. So it's easier for me to put him in his rock room and roll him someplace to go check things out.
So
sling bullet.
There you go.
So as an actual familiar, he's not going to be, oh, let me go scout this out, or let me go fly this for you.
Did you ever actually figure out his move speed?
Yeah, it's like 10.
Wow, he's super
slow. He trucks it the whole way.
Because he's this big. He doesn't fly.
He shrinks every time he does it. Like when he started off, he was like the size of a gnome.
Yeah.
Now he's like the size of a Lego mini.
He's always been a rock that fits in the size of your hand, and he's been this tall.
In my mind, he was like 18 inches to begin with.
I thought it was a foot tall.
I'd imagine him to be like something that would fit in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, it does. But then everyone knows Optimus Prime gets way bigger than a truck. Or what about Soundwave? He's like, he's a boombox.
Now, since he is a rock monster, if you were to sling Rune, what would be the damage on a Rune?
Well, I never really put any thought into that angle.
It's definitely a magic weapon.
Yeah, so I guess you could say it would do a magic weapon, but it would be just typical sling damage. I wouldn't think it would do any extra. But
yeah,
anyone who's silly enough to do that kind of thing is going to break the bond between.
No. It's a special attack, right? It hits the monster in the forehead, and then he transforms, and then like attaches to his face like a face hugger.
Yeah.
Rune's
or you're like, Rune,
he's tiny but fierce. Yeah.
Tell me what's over there when you get back in about a half a day.
Yeah. Poor Rune. Yeah, so pretty much Rune just hangs out on my shoulder and talks Dwarven to me.
Yeah, because he does have a language, and for this guy, he's a dwarf creation. He's totally etched in dwarven runes and sigils for.
So it's like he's got tattoos
magic
everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he speaks Dwarven, so if you don't understand Dwarven, you don't understand him.
You just don't get it. You just don't get Rune.
Well, I mean, you could rescan a version of this for any given very highly like dwarves are they're magical in the sort of divine sense usually. Like a very close to deities. Whereas like for elves, it would be more truly arcane, and you could make an elvish version of the same
pet
thing.
stick.
Yeah, pet stick, exactly.
Or for gnomes, it could be a clockwork creation
thing. Yeah, exactly.
Clockwork garden gnome.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Because gnomes have sense of humor as well.
Yes, indeed.
They understand irony.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna make a mini gnome. This will be awesome.
But when the gnome thing transforms, it's and you look over like it's already transformed, but it's like making the noise for like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Stop already.
Yeah, it made a music box that turns into a gnome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Dude, a Jack in the Box. It's basically it just pops out. It turns
the box like unfolds and turns into his robes or something.
Yeah.
So so I kind of feel like you put that in the game to kind of like solve a problem, and like Wizards have a big problem if you have a game where there's not a lot of money going on, right? If there's not a lot of gold. So for me, it means like half costs for research and spells, but then is that half again when it's my actual school?
Yes.
So it makes research, putting spells in my spell book way cheaper. Like,
because I created the item, as you said, to solve a problem. Not only because is it the fact that you're a wizard? It's because you're a wizard fighter, and you're looking at, okay, well, how do I have enough money to be able to afford putting the spells that I find in my spell book, as well as
my full plate slush fund.
You're getting better armor, which as a fighter wizard you're due both. So it's like, well, how can I go ahead and make that easier on you as a character.
Well, even without that, though, wizards in this edition really, it's really expensive to write spells in a spell book. I feel like it's more expensive than it's been in the past.
And it's totally based, whether or not that is a hindrance or difficulty is completely based on the DM.
Yeah, well, but
Like,
here's
how
the
much
thing,
does it
though.
cost
Like, like the fighter typically, I mean, they're probably largely basing this off of the monoclass builds.
Mhm.
Like, the fighter has to spend all this money to get plate mail to make him the optimal version of his class, right? Well, the wizard has no weapons to really buy. They just have spells. So how do you make that remotely equivocal? I know every time that I mean, like, I don't know if you've ever done the math of stacking up
I think
what it takes to stock a spell book versus a
I
suit of
think
plate mail.
4 first level spell is splint mail. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty hefty.
Yeah.
That's just 4 first level spells. I mean,
Well, you take away 2 of them
Like
and you add in
detect
1 second.
magic and
Identify.
and
yeah, and then
That's-
plus costly components.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I mean,
is
you
another thing.
get some spells for free as you level, like you just
yeah,
get some.
you get to.
But I mean, so like it's just saying that you don't get infinite spells because there's an inherent benefit to having access to all this stuff. And well, you're gonna have to. There's
What?
got to be some sort of trade-off. Just because
The-
you go and capture spell books left and right doesn't mean you instantly get the
they,
scrap them.
they become. You start using them for door stops.
Yeah, exactly.
like,
So, like, yeah.
if
level
you fight,
furniture off. You know.
if you fight a wizard and he's got a spell book, like, you've got the spell book, and now it's just going to take time and money to put that in.
That might be
thing.
$5,000 sitting there that you can't access.
Whereas if
Yeah.
you fight, a warrior, you're the plate mail or the the weapon that he's using,
You just get to put it on.
you just bloop, I'm ready to go.
Or you could just go. Well, I mean, if you're a party full of like your fighter's already got his best armor and stuff like that, you just go sell that for half value, and you
Right, but
your
it's
portion.
instant use, whereas a wizard is the only class.
Where you're like, when everyone's like, yeah, we need to sell that spell. He's like, no way.
Yeah.
But you can't even use it. So I don't care.
I'm holding on to it to the day I can.
Yeah.
So that it's the only class that has that drawback, that restriction. And I definitely understand the whole, warrior types need to buy new armor, whereas the wizard needs to put spells in a spell book. I just think the actual cost is not.
They're not equal by far.
Mm-hmm. And you can do some really fantastic things with spells, and they do give you some free ones every level. So if you're really itching for a spell, you can be like, well, I'm taking this one.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm getting my fireball and my haste or whatever you're gonna.
Well, actually, my strategy has been to take the ones that cost the most. So the thing that I like, I'm an evoker that never takes evocation spells because they're the cheapest ones to put in my book.
It's all about the magic economy.
Yeah, pretty much.
The economy of using a spell book. Yeah.
So so Rune is this nifty little thing that was you created to solve a problem. So and actually it's good because you're like, well, I don't want to hinder this one type of character, but at the same time, I don't want to flood the campaign with a bunch of gold because X amount of like if I'm giving that player enough gold to put those spells in his book, that means all the other players are
Have
getting the
access
same
to that
amount.
resource,
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Well, I mean, from that standpoint, though, like you can kill a guy and take his armor. Well, I mean, how many people? Like all of our warriors would have plate mail if it was just we were just rampantly fighting people with plate mail and taking their stuff. Like, I mean, it's very contingent on just the nature of the campaign and the GM running the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, technically, all of our fighters should be bedecked in plate mail because we would have taken all these spoils and goods. But that hasn't happened either. So I mean, it is very much the fiat of the GM. Like this game totally comes down to that anyway. Like, you know what? You don't like the rules on casting, like or getting the cost in your spell book. Well, reduce it by half across the board if you want that in your campaign.
We discussed that.
Yeah. So
like we've discussed that because again, like if you change the actual money in your game for one character, it affects everyone.
Right.
And it's not just about just the things, but it is about. Okay, so if you decide that wizard is going to need 500 gold pieces per level or whatever, just an arbitrary number, then that means each of your other players get that too.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does it jack up their power level? Whereas no matter how many spells that wizard crams into his book, he can only still cast so many.
Right.
Yeah, it just gives him options.
Well,
those are expensive.
But here's the thing: outside of the mundane equipment, the next tier that your characters are going to go is magic items, right? Well, guess what? As the GM, it's completely on you how much you're allowing that in your game, right?
And how
Like,
much
you have
they cost if you
absolute
can actually
control.
find one. Yeah.
Can you ever remotely ever buy it, or how are you going to come by these items? You know, if they have a cost, like, well, yeah, but it's like 20,000 gold because this thing's super rare, and you know it's going to take a couple months to find it or get it or whatever. So I mean, there is that. Like, all the other like martial characters in the game are pretty much restricted by the availability of magic items in your world and your campaign.
True.
So just saying.
So
Back to Rune.
back to Rune. You know, we've got the actual item, but typically with MageForge, we always do a backstory, and I didn't really put any kind of huge amount of work into, well, where did it come from? I've just said, you know, it's been around for a long time.
I suspect a dwarf made it.
A dwarf probably.
Remarkably enough, with a speaking dwarf.
So, you know, in
Dwarven runes and dwarf speech.
you know, in 5th edition, there's no restrictions. You know, unlike other editions that, you know, dwarves can't be casters. So there's no problem for there being dwarven wizards. So did a dwarf wizard make it? Did a dwarf cleric make it? Has it always been accessed as a familiar? You know what?
Well, I mean, his reducing the cost, like he's basically a research assistant. Is
Yeah.
really what he is.
Mhm.
So he's very arcane oriented in my mind. And then I almost see him like a dwarven homunculus. Like if a dwarf were to make a homunculus, that's what it would
Blood
be.
and rock.
Yeah.
Blood and stone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that only makes sense. But it's funny too, like the fact that in previous editions where dwarves couldn't actually be wizards yet, they're always like the go-to race to make the best magic items.
Well, mythologically, they've always been in that space too.
Yeah, well, that's what
Yeah,
I mean. It's
yeah.
just odd to be like, yeah, but you can't actually use magic. You just make really good stuff. You know, like, yeah, basically,
Well, I mean, that's like just like a weird sort of Gygaxian trope where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, elves that live forever, yeah, you don't go past 9th level as a fighter or whatever, even though you're going to live for like another like 500 years.
the idea was you would
Yeah.
take 9 levels in every class,
exactly.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like Icewind Dale, like even in there, Brunar crafts like his ultimate magic
Aegis
item, Aegis Fang.
Mm-hmm.
But he's totally just a fighter.
Yeah, he's just a fighter.
Well, that's because it's books and books happen differently. apparently.
Well, although in 4th edition and 5th edition with things like ritual magic,
Yeah.
it's totally can be a thing, which
Yeah.
is one of the things I like about that.
Mhm.
So you can. I like the fact that you can make the fighter character that can actually use ritual magic and be a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. So we got probably a dwarven wizard, maybe making this thing homunculus-ish, homunculi.
So
What else we got?
are we saying it's gone back, loads of centuries? Are we saying it's gone back thousands of years? How old do we want to say Rune is?
Dun, dun, dun. It's kind of rude to ask a homunculus his age,
Well,
don't you think?
I'm not asking the homunculus. I'm asking my fellow Nerdarchus. And
Well, the only thing is, if he's been around for super long, I absolutely feel like he should be like giving a certain level of like advantage on history checks or some sort of static bonus or something. Because if you're talking about something that's been around for centuries and can speak and remember,
Maybe he's not. Maybe he doesn't.
But maybe he doesn't
hear
get
stuff.
outside the lab.
Yeah, and he's in rock form. Maybe he doesn't really hear much in rock form unless he's talked to.
Or at all. Maybe just he's inactive, inert.
Yeah. So I mean, all those centuries don't really matter if you were sitting on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
And then,
as a paperweight.
yeah,
nice
take it.
paperweight.
You'd be like, here, what do you think of this rune formation room? Like, oh yeah, this.
The answer is
this.
6.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that to totally win the battle later. Like, oh, that's nice. Doesn't ask what battle. Doesn't ask who's in it.
He's just very disinterested.
So he never learns.
He's
because
only
he's not-
interested in solving like arcane problems.
Yeah.
So
So
if
if
he's
he's more
an
like
idiot savant. He's Rain Man.
He's like a cryptologist.
Kmart sucks.
Cryptologist in a little bottle of a little package there. So if he doesn't, he wouldn't have. He could be thousands of years old and not have any knowledge, rather
Of anything, yeah.
other than solving a magical formula.
So he's made to be an assistant. He speaks Dwarven. He was made by a Dwarven wizard. He could be really old, but it doesn't have to be. We found him in a snow globe in the realm of winter,
So he got lost.
and he was a Christmas present.
yes,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. So he could have easily been in that snow globe for however long Ted has that snow globe around, and it could be from a And do we have any old dwarven civilizations that are still around that he could be from?
We could, or we could just make them from the Mordanes.
Yeah,
Because everything weird comes from there anyway.
that's
He was
right.
from Stoneholm in Old Canyon.
Well,
From Stoneholm.
well, it could be from Stoneholm.
Yeah, so we could stick him in the Mordanes, the Mordane crafters long ago made him.
Yeah, that definitely.
They haven't been making magic items for anybody for 500 years, so it puts them back.
At least 500 years old.
Yeah.
But
So-
that definitely fits in with the established stuff that you've made.
Yeah.
So
A pet rock that solves magical formulas? Yeah, definitely. It would fit in that one with the hammer.
The hammer that's a sword.
Yes.
so are we liking that?
Yeah, I think so. This one is kind of like a little bit more generic and run of the mill compared to some of the other ones we've done. But that's okay because sometimes that's all it is.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of history. Who made it? Well, the dwarves made it. What was it made for? Well, it's made for exactly what it does. You use it to help research spells.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, and the
magic.
fact that it functions as a familiar, like there aren't that many magic items that do that specific thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Well, yeah. Well, I mean that's true. But familiars in this edition, like for the most part, don't do that much unless they're one of the special ones.
Mhm.
right, like the pseudo dragon or the
Yeah, so this is a magic item that you can make your familiar. Helps you assist wizards. So it's a research assistant.
Yeah, like you really are trading all the cool familiar stuff for the research assistant.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're going to send this thing out there to scout or do reconnaissance or anything like that.
Yeah.
You
It
got-
doesn't do any of that stuff.
He doesn't move very fast, and he's like, "You want me to do what?"
I mean, maybe he could do mundane stuff like well, I mean, I imagine this is factored into the reduction in cost, but like he does mundane stuff like scribing for you. Like he could just pick up a quill and like
yeah, maybe.
yeah.
All right, I'm going to pick up this thing the same as I am. Okay, here we go.
Well, he's a rock. He's strong.
Yeah, no, he's strong and quills aren't that heavy.
But
Yeah,
it might
and-
be exactly what he does. He might be actually scribing them.
He walks back and
Stabbing
forth
him
on
in
the
the-
page and like like
And he's sentient. So that's good and bad because they don't, magic item when you say, hey, hit this thing and do this flame attack. All right. But when it's a sentient thing, it's like hit this thing and do this flame attack. I'm not touching that.
Are you
like,
out of your mind?
Are you out of your mind?
It's all the way on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
Do you know I have a movement of 10?
But like that's if I hit that, it's gonna smell. I don't want to hit it with flame.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, come on, just do it. So sentience is not always a benefit. So
So more than anything, I like it for the role playing aspect of it.
yeah.
I mean, it's great that it reduces the cost of my spells,
There's flavor to it, and that's
but a lot of times in the
really
game,
what's it taste like?
rock.
chocolate.
Salty. Snozzleberry.
Dun, dun, dun. So a lot of times in the game that we've been playing, that I've used it to role play with and talk to, and
Yeah.
people look at me funny because I'm talking to a rock,
But it's a bipedal rock.
and it talks
If
back.
my guy didn't speak Dwarven, I'd probably just think you're muttering curses at something for some reason. 'Cause that's what Dwarven
You're talking smack on an elf again, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what I would think if I didn't actually know what you're saying.
Yeah. So with that, I think we forged another one. You guys, what do you think? Comment, like, subscribe, share. You know the drill.
You can come support our Patreon account and patronize us in a good way.
You can hang out with us over on nerdarchy.com.
You also join the conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.